Welcome to it, sports fans. It is Monday, the 22nd of February. Second month. Love it. I'm loving it. I had a great weekend. I hope you had a great weekend. I hope you had some loved ones around you. And it's time to get into a new sports week. What a weekend, huh? Talk about Novak tomorrow. Naomi Osaka. She's, wow. Boy, oh boy. She is something, huh? Cool story with her and Serena Williams, but we'll talk a little bit more tennis tomorrow. Just sensational. I love tennis for a very long time. I must say, tennis is close to me. My father was an avid tennis guy since I was very, very young. A big fan of Stefan Effenberg back in the day. That dates me. That shows I'm now old. I'm officially, if you're South African, we have a word for that. It's called a Bali. And there's no translation for Bali. If you like from another country, we're fortunate enough to have viewers from different countries. I can't translate Bali. It's one of those South African things. All right, great to have you with me. I'm MKT. This is the MKT Show, by the way. And it is Cliff Central Sport. Tell you what a weekend, huh? Football was insane. We'll talk a little bit about Carlo Ancelotti. I'll give my thoughts on a little bit on the Merseyside derby. I'll talk about that throughout the week a bit more, and then we'll finish off on Spurs. Sport at cliffcentral.com, by the way. If you've you want to say a few things, some people are better at the written word than the spoken word. I'm all about it. Let's get involved. Let's chat. Let's talk. If you'd like to write me a love or a hate letter, feel free. Sport at cliffcentral.com. Few emails. So I had 2 emails saying, hey, when are you moving the time slot? I will let you know. We will communicate that either here or right next to me is a guy called Gareth Clip. Well, he's not next to me. He's physically distancing. Looks like a tiny little model of himself, but that's actually Gareth, who comes to the studio every single evening because he loves sports so much. 12. By the way, we will be moving to midday. So if you've got a terrible boss or a terrible co-worker you're trying to avoid, we'll be with you there. So look out for those announcements. They'll be on my social media platforms. MKT, that's Mike Kilo Tango. MKT Inspires on all social media platforms. Otherwise, Cliff Central Sport on all platforms. All right, let's get into it. By the way, this weekend, tough one for my Chelsea, huh? No good. Not happy about. Not unhappy with the performance, but it happens. The result not great, but good performance. All right, let's get into this. Something I'm starting to understand a little bit more in life. So I come from my parents are both very rural, but my mom actually comes from a slightly more cultured home, if you want to call it that. My grandfather was a poet and a writer and blah blah blah, and my mom's a tremendous what you might call interlocutor and public speaker. It's in the family. But my dad's side is a little bit more agricultural, let's call them. Both rural, very, very rural, but my dad's side definitely more. My grandfather was a carpenter of the state, dropped out of school, I think standard 5, or I don't know what that'll be now, grade 7. So, I've never been a man for appearance because I was just raised by a guy, my dad, who he's just like, be practical or nothing, doesn't really care about how things look. He cares whether they work or not. And I guess I've become more and more of that. We all become our fathers, and, girls all become their mothers, blah, blah, blah. Boring old story, not a psychologist. My point is that aesthetics matter. And I've realized that this weekend after watching a maestro at work who doesn't get the credit he deserves. So I thought I'd bring it up today and say, this guy had 4 Serie A's as a player and 2 Champions Leagues as a player, by the way. As a player. I mean, that in a lifetime is enough to go, you should be legendary and hoisted. And by the way, in all of those teams, he is quite literally central to building those teams. At Roma and at Milan, he is at the very center of both clubs doing that. By the way, legendary run at Roma. Go look at the stats. I think they've gone 4 Coppa Italias as well. But his ultimate defining moment, and this is probably the greatest club side of all time. Some say Pep Guardiola's team, but when you dig a little deeper, I think of modern day football, and I think of all time, this is the greatest club team that's ever actually been composed, even with the talent. He was at the center of that. He was a part of Arrigo Sacchi's great 90s team. If you're old like me, you remember the 90s. Italian football was on South African television, and Italian football ran the 80s, 90s, and early noughties of football. But let's get to him as a coach. So, by the way, I just want to repeat that. 4 Serie A's and 2 Champions League titles as a player. As a player. He's got 3 Champions League titles as a coach. That is phenomenal. That is phenomenal. He's one of 3 of all time to ever do that. He's one of 4 managers to win the league and cup double in Premier League history. I'll give the names of the others. Ferguson, Wenger, Pep Guardiola. Maybe you've heard of them. He's won the Milan, Turin, Madrid, Merseyside, Munich, and London derbies. Yet nobody speaks of this guy in the top 3 or 4 of all time. Folks, this is maybe the greatest footballing career that has ever existed. Ever. By the way, Milan in 1990 come that close to winning the World Cup as well. Excuse me, Italy. They are that close, and he completes the whole thing. But this might be the greatest playing and coach career you've ever heard. This may be the greatest footballing career ever. Folks, Carlo Ancelotti just doesn't get the credit he deserves. I've never understood this. I've never understood why he gets overlooked. For me, he's a top 5 all time at the very worst, because I shoehorn Arrigo Sacchi in there, because I think Sacchi put the greatest football team of all time together, better than Pep Guardiola's Barcelona. But if you're a modern day fan, all right, I'll give you Guardiola. I'll give you Guardiola. But Arrigo Sacchi was doing what Guardiola was doing with Dutch football in the Catenaccio era. Folks, Carlo Ancelotti deserves some credit, because a lot of people this weekend will say Everton beat Liverpool this weekend. They didn't beat them. They absolutely schooled them. And, again, it's an aesthetics thing. That was my point up front, to say I come from a home where just get it done. No one cares what it looks like. Stop the frilly stuff. Just get it done. That's my old man to a T, and I can feel myself becoming that. I'm not really into aesthetics. I'm not a cool guy. I've never thought of myself as cool. I get it. I'm just like, does it work? Yes. If it doesn't work, get it out of my face. That they call it function over form. Right? You want function over form. Some people are more form over function. Everybody's crazy about Jurgen Klopp, but this weekend, Everton's Liverpool, I actually ended up rewatching the game on Sunday late on. That was a tactical schooling by a team half as good. Don't give me the injury excuses. I don't want to hear it. Folks, 4 Serie A titles as a player, 2 Champions League as a player, and he's got 3 as a coach. He's one of 4 coaches to ever win a league and cup double. Klopp hasn't done that. Telling me about the best team of all time. This guy needs to get his credit. Top 5 of all time. Carlo Ancelotti, an absolute great. The Don, an absolute great. This weekend, I think, was an ode to him. Milan, Turin, Madrid, Merseyside, Munich, and London derbies. He's ticked all of those boxes. Nobody else has come close to that. By the way, nobody's close to his modern-day coaching record either. Pep Guardiola, for all of his greatness. Folks, I think Pep's the greatest of all time. Fair enough. But Ancelotti pushes him damn close. Ancelotti's got the greatest playing career of all time, and it's not close. He's got the greatest football catalogue of all time. And if you don't believe that, he was part of the centre-back lineup, by the way, when Baresi was there. Played on the right, played in the middle sometimes. Franco Baresi was there. And you may have heard of another guy who was starting to come along. He played left back at the time, but he was starting to come on really strong. A guy called Paolo Maldini, not too bad. But this is, I'm sorry, as a complete football catalogue, 4 Serie A titles, 2 Champions League titles. By the way, that Roma team, go and look it up. I think it was 4 or 5 cup titles in Italy. That is unheard of in that time. Italian football in the 80s and 90s is what the Premier League is now. Dominant. And he was unbelievable in that Milan team. A rock for Italy in their greatest time, partnered Franco Baresi and could play on the right as well. Just an unbelievable career, top 5 of all time. For me, Carlo Ancelotti, it's an aesthetics thing. He's not exciting. He's not Klopp, Klopp with the cool glasses and loud and, everybody falls in love with the heavy metal personality. A little light on the trophy cabinet. A little light on the trophy cabinet, the Jurgen Klopp thing. Folks, they've always said this, all right? His name was Albert Einstein, and he said something quite magnificent. He says, the bigger the ego, the lower, right? The lower the capability. Right? Small ego, big capability. It's pretty much applicable everywhere. Carlo Ancelotti is the epitome of Einstein's great saying. You never hear a mess from him. I've never heard excuses. You never hear it from him. He just gets on with the job, and he has been brilliant wherever he's been. Brilliant. Absolutely. But by the way, Pep, not always brilliant, because Bayern Munich turned pretty messy. Carlo was absolutely immaculate wherever he's been. So shout out to Carlo Ancelotti, and that was an awesome thing to watch. I love football tactics. I love Italian football. So that was an awesome sort of tactical masterclass, and keeping Liverpool's front three at bay. All right, take a comment. If it isn't good old Mr. Arsenal. Jesse Randolph says, I wanted him at Arsenal. I mean, they went with Mikel Arteta. It's hilarious, but that's Arsenal all over, isn't it? That is Arsenal all over. And we'll talk Arsenal tomorrow, because I do have quite a bit to say about the current situation. But that is, I mean, you had the choice of, you could have had Ancelotti. And don't tell me Arsenal doesn't have the money. They're not spending money on players. So don't tell me Arsenal don't have the money. They are not spending their money on players. Ancelotti's would have been perfect. If he can rebuild Everton, he can rebuild us. I don't know if he would have loved working with, he's worked with Cristiano Ronaldo. I'm not sure if he wants to work with Pepe. Maybe he looked at it and went, ugh. I don't know about that. And at this stage in his career, why would he want to go into a rebuild? Everton's not a rebuild. They spent what, 180 million pounds last season? That's not a rebuild. They're gonna go again in the transfer market this season. And who wouldn't want to play for Carlo Ancelotti? So, yeah, but that's Arsenal. Jesse says, so the BPL is the best league in the world, the most competitive, but do you think they play the best football? I do now. I didn't for a while, but I think with the introduction of Carlo again, Pep Guardiola being here, I still love Jose. I think Klopp is at his peak as a coach. When you look at that football, so over the last 4 or 5 years, it's very difficult to look past Man City and Liverpool in terms of cut and thrust and a mix of sort of the British robustness, right? They're quite robust and robotic in England with that flair of Europe. I think City have been, unstoppable, and City are probably the best footballing side to watch, right? They're as close to Barcelona as you'll get. And then Liverpool over the last 2 seasons have been nothing short of scintillating. And Everton at times have been, if you like the tactical side of football, they've been quite spectacular at times. You got to have the best managers in the world to play the best football. And I think this is alluding to people that are fans of Italian and Spanish football. So there's a little bit more technical nous. You see, the British sides tend to struggle, especially the lower you go. The players in Europe are a little bit more technically gifted. So a better first touch. They're happier to absorb pressure, right? The British players, there's a kind of a derogatory term. It's called kick and run football. And you'll often hear this being labeled for the British, is that they kick and run, right? That's that long ball and kick and chase, kick and run style. But I think it's become more technical as Pep and Jurgen in particular. I think those two, for the first time, they've attracted top level European technical talent, and then they've brought in their guys, right? So even the English players now have to mold to Pep and Jurgen. He's not going to accept 90s British football, right? Like Tammy Abraham would be useless to both guys. You can't have that. I think you saw it with Romelu Lukaku as well, with the way United want to go with the technical football. That ain't going to work. And you see it with Bruno, and you see it with these managers now. So I do think so now. I didn't for a long time. I think the 90s and noughties, it was quite painful to watch that very direct British football. Although, listen, people always say this. German teams don't play nice football either. Right? You look at the Munich team; it's so functional, like it's so robotic. I mean, I'm a huge Bayern Munich fan, but that's not the best football. So, so it wins though. But it's so German, it's so functional, and it is so outcomes based, which I like. I mean, it's very much my personality. But yeah, great question, and I do think now the BPL cannot be accused of playing kick and run football. All right, let's finish off on this one. Great question, by the way. Jesse Randolph, better than his Arsenal team. All right, let's. This one's interesting to me. Here's the thing. Talk a little bit about Spurs. I think when you're in a relationship, you should always be careful before you break up with your girlfriend. Right? Always be careful. And I've had one or two friends who I've had to have this conversation with. Is in every relationship, whether you like it or not, there's a reacher and there's a settler. Right? There's a reacher and there's a settler. And if you're honest with yourself, and it's ugly, listen, I've had two great relationships in my life. They've both settled for me. And I'm not just saying that to try and be #humble. It was just they were another level. That's why we probably broke up in the end. But two great relationships. So I'm speaking from personal experience to go, when you kind of have to settle and say, oh, I'm the reacher. Be honest. It's hard because we all have to be honest in life. There's a reacher and there's a settler. There's a reason Jose Mourinho and Spurs have to stay together. Spurs, for their own good, have to keep Mourinho. They have to keep him. Because they are reaching well beyond their means. Listen, just stop with the Twitter talk. Mourinho is not finished. He's still one of the greatest on earth. And what is he? A serial winner. Spurs are in a final for the first time since, I don't know, Moses and that ark thing that he had. Or whatever. Is that Moses? I don't know the storybook. Spurs are in a cup final again. Mourinho, serial offender in finals. Mourinho's not the problem. Spurs are the reacher. In every relationship, there's a reacher and there's a settler. But you need grown-ups to realize that. You know how, and I can only speak from a guy's perspective. Guys, stay in the relationship. If it's good, stop looking for great, because great doesn't exist, folks. Great can be created in a good situation. Great is almost impossible. If somebody's great, they're taken. If somebody's great, they're taken. Stay in your relationship, especially if you are the reacher. And you know what happens with guys is they tend to get a little bit too much money. When they get money, they forget that, hey, that ugly face in the mirror, that's not improving, by the way, with the millions in your bank account. That's not improving. You leave your good wife, good girlfriend, and you try and reach for the model. You reach for that, and before you know it, it's a mess, and you're driving a convertible at the age of 45. That's what happens with guys, right? So I'm just telling you, Spurs for the last few years have been spoiled. They've been in the Champions League with Pochettino, and they're starting to feel themselves a bit. I think they're starting to think they're a genuine top 6 side. They need to relax. They're the reacher here. Keep Mourinho, because I'm telling you, Dyer, Sanchez, Davies, that ain't going to work. Reguilon, that ain't going to work, folks. Aurier, that ain't going to work. Højbjerg's the only one, along with Son, I believe, is at that level. I'm not in love with Harry Kane either, by the way. If I'm Spurs, if I can get 200 million for Harry Kane, I'd do it like that. Like that. Because you can be mediocre without Kane. Just sell him, move on. Mourinho has won before, and he will win again. Give him the money and get rid of the deadwood. Folks, you can't expect Mourinho to go into every single game and have to babysit 7 of his 11 starters. Lucas Moura, that ain't going to cut it. I'm sorry, that ain't going to cut it. Eric Lamela ain't going to cut it. Ndombele, for all of his flashy skills, ain't going to cut it. Mourinho's not the problem. There's no quality at Spurs. And when I say quality, there's probably top 6 quality. Mourinho wants to win. And I've said this before. You don't pay talent, you pay production. And when Mourinho demands, he must get that feedback. You know what he needs? He needs grown-ups. He needs men. He needs grown men that are ready to win now. And Mourinho will do that in the next cycle. Mourinho has got a great saying, and I think it's an old French saying, but he says, no eggs, no omelet. And by the way, I always add something to that. If you've got eggs, right, the quality of the omelet needs you to have quality eggs. You can't just have any eggs and expect a nice omelet. That ain't how it works. In every relationship, there's a reacher and there's a settler. And if you're honest, go and look in the mirror before you go to bed. I hope it's not getting your heart racing. If you're intending to break up with your girlfriend, just pump the brakes. Just pump the brakes. There's no great out there. If they're great, they're taken. If you're Spurs, just pump the brakes. There's nobody out there of Mourinho's quality, not close to Mourinho's quality. Suffer now, win later. Don't let go of Mourinho. He's settling for you. You are reaching for him. Change is hard, folks. Change is hard. Spurs lost this weekend. Settle down. The season's over. Don't worry about it. There's a few that have to go. And trust me, winners, players know. Players know. They'll join Mourinho. And people know your career's short. Mourinho will take you to the top. All right. We'll finish off with Jesse, who, before this comment happens, by the way, he is an Arsenal fan. So that's just a proviso. He says, if you were a manager and had a choice of going to Arsenal or Tottenham, which team would you choose? Tottenham, because the Arsenal job's too big in terms of a rebuild. So somebody was saying it. I'm going to talk a little bit more about Arsenal tomorrow. But the reason I think Mikel Arteta's job is almost impossible and he will get fired is that Arteta is the first real guy to be willing to tear down the Wenger empire. And it's 17 years of Arsenal eroding. It's now Arteta's problem. Whereas Jose is actually, I believe Spurs have been, quote unquote, probably the best business model in England for the last 15 years. The way Daniel Levy has grown it slowly with his own players, right? You get the talent and then you sell them for ridiculous money. He's done that slowly. Then he built the stadium and then he got the international marketing. I mean, you look at the NFL deal, of course, with COVID, it's a horrible year, but he's got that stadium now, which is obviously that's incredible. And I read the articles. You can go and read the articles, but they will pay that stadium off within 5 years. It feels like Arsenal are still paying off the Emirates, by the way, which is just unbelievable to me. It looks like Spurs are going to pay that off in 5 years. And it's a better stadium than the Emirates. So I'd rather have Tottenham because if you look at the curve, Arsenal are still on their way down, I believe, because more of Wenger's empire needs to be torn down. There's too much mediocrity everywhere. It's become accepted to be mediocre at Arsenal. And I'll tell you the example. I would say if you were to look at it in today's terms, Arsenal are BlackBerry, right? And I think Spurs are the iPhone. But at the very beginning, when Steve Jobs did that presentation, BlackBerry crashed, and I think you're at the beginning of Spurs. We're on the way up. It's a much more exciting job. It's a much more exciting, and it's an easier job because there will be money available at Spurs now, and we're looking to go that way. Arsenal, at very best, are looking to level out. Because be honest, right? If you're an Arsenal fan, you probably have to get rid of 5 or 6 again. And by the way, when you buy players, especially in the Premier League, they don't hit straight away, right? By the way, you've sunk 72 million into Nicola Pepe. What does that look like now? And Arsenal isn't Chelsea, right? Stan Kroenke has shown no inclination to go and dig into his own pocket and say, here's another 70. Because when Chelsea, I think Fernando Torres probably got a tougher ride than he got. But Shevchenko crashed. Abramovich said, don't even worry about it. I'll give you Torres. Right? That didn't work out. Don't even worry about it. Who was it? Mattia Kejman. That doesn't work. Don't worry about it. I'll give you Torres. That doesn't work. Don't worry about it. Diego Costa. I mean, that kind of ends. Don't worry about it. We'll try Romelu Lukaku. Okay, that doesn't work. We'll get Michy Batshuayi. All right, that doesn't work. That's fine. Let's move on to the next guy. Right? I don't think they're that. I just don't. I don't think that Arsenal have that type of ownership. So I think it's a much harder job because Arteta has to rebuild the culture. Everybody knows who Jose Mourinho is. So, or I think Spurs would be much more exciting because they've never won before. There's no real expectation, and they're on the up. And I'm sorry, if you're an Arsenal fan, I think you need to accept. I think you need to be very careful about the bigger club. Obviously, the history leans on Arsenal's side. But folks, I always say this to people. This is what happened. And I just use BlackBerry and Nokia and Kodak. Be very, very careful of hanging around with people that are always talking about history. You don't the nightmare. and a friend of mine actually sent me this message. She said, hey, you're always talking about, and she was a good friend of mine in the UK when I was there. She says, hey, you're always talking about when you were younger and playing football there. Because her and I have this kind of joke of these athletes you always see at bars, like these old guys with bellies, and they're always telling everyone how good they were when they were younger. I've just realized I turn into that, but okay, that's what it is. Be very, very careful about hanging around people that are always talking about their heyday in primary school, high school. Like the world is now, by the way, because BlackBerry did that and then boom, and Kodak did that and then the iPhone. And BlackBerry, where are they now? And Nokia did that and then boom, Samsung. So, I think Arsenal need to be very, very careful. I think it's where Man United fans find themselves now is be very careful of look at our history, look at my history. Nobody cares. Quite frankly, nobody cares. What have you done for me lately? Some people are busy talking about history. Some people are busy making history. Now, if I said to you, do you want to work at Toyota or do you want to work at Tesla? All right. Be very, very careful. And I think Arsenal, this obsession with the biggest club, stop living on the past because the last 5-6 years, be honest, it's been Spurs. I'd much rather have the Spurs job. I think it's a cushier job and the prospect is better. They're going to have money in the bank soon. And they're solid. They're stable. Say what you will about Spurs. They are stable. Arsenal, what are you going to do with Nicola Pepe? Because you must remember that's £100 million sunken cost now. Like, he's not good enough. Get over it. So that's a sunken £100 million pounds, by the way, because salary. Now, what do you do there? Best case scenario, you get 25 million for him. So that's a 75 million pound sunken cost. Now you must go and replace him and hope the next guy isn't another him. And I said it to you before, Aubameyang's not the guy. He's not the guy. And then the other reason I wouldn't take the Arsenal job over Tottenham. Folks, if you've ever tried to build culture anywhere, trying to get people on board, alpha males on board, oh my God. Yeah, so it's Spurs for me quite easily. All right, before you go, please click like, push that one. Push like. If you don't like this content, then just push nothing. I don't know. Go back to scrubbing your shower or whatever you were doing before this. I don't know what people are doing in their private lives. I'm not in your homes. I don't know. But the fact that you chose to spend your time with me is awesome. I appreciate it. And by the way, I'm doing a little, if you didn't see it, I've just, on my social media, I have released, every Monday, I'll release my thoughts on something that happened on the weekend and something I'm looking forward to. Very, very cool to be working with Betway. And yeah, they let me have lots of fun. So I get to really just lash out. By the way, like, share, subscribe. I'm on Twitter and Instagram. MKT Inspires. Please go and like and share and subscribe that. And let me know what you think, by the way. Let me know what sports you want to hear about, because I watch everything on the weekend. So that's very, very cool. MKT Inspires. Go and check that out. It is kind of what I'm up to with Betway and hashtag the Betway squad. Having lots of fun there. And good times. But ladies and gentlemen, you could have been anywhere with anybody tonight. You chose to be with me. It makes no sense. It means you're not making good decisions in your life, but that's what it is, right? That's what it is. It is the MKT show. I am MKT. That is Gareth Cliff. This is Cliff Central Sport. Ladies and gentlemen, for now, we are the hell out of here.